Ravens taking on the Miami Dolphins, but all of the residue of Sunday's action is there. We welcome in our head coach on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation, where they just built the UA house over on the east side on Fayette. You definitely have to check that out. He is Coach Billick out on Twitter, and he is our Super Bowl winning coach from Super Bowl 35. I thought of you, Coach Billick, when Dwayne Starks was down on the field on Sunday carrying the little purple torch. Ravens have been really good about honoring all those Super Bowl 35 guys this year. We've had Goose out there. We've had Dwayne Starks. It's good to be an old Raven here and carry the purple torch, I think.
Oh, it is great, and it's great to see building that history. Of course, when I first got here, it had been such a short history, so, there's only so much you pull back on, and now obviously enough time has transpired to have those kind of memories and rebuild that kind of history. It's great that the guys are staying involved.
Well, I remember the history. We used to just beat the crap out of the Bengals twice a year, and they were sort of automatic wins back in the early days for you. Certainly, it hadn't been that way the last couple of years. 5 losses in a row. Finally, the Ravens get this done, but the question remains, how good are they? How good can they be? This is clearly not the real Bengals team, right? I mean, what they are at 3-7-1 now, having lost, it's a shell of what Marvin was putting together in the offseason.
Well, with what they had lost in the offseason in terms of both in the secondary and the receiving core, to not have to play a Cincinnati Bengal team without an A.J. Green obviously is huge. But like you said, I mean, the Ravens have struggled the last 5 outings, 0-5 the last 5 times they've played the Bengals, so it doesn't matter what the score, it doesn't matter how close it was, you got to win. And you're sitting here at 6-5 and leading the division with Pittsburgh, and that's all that really matters at this point.
Well, for how they played on Sunday, some thoughts about this sort of evolution of this offense. I mean, we've already fired one offensive coordinator. They've already gone a month without winning. They've had trouble moving the ball. But one thing they have, and you had this with Matt Stover at a different level, but the kicker. I mean, the kicker is their best football player. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
And there's nothing wrong with that. We've seen around the league how much that is a factor right now and how many teams have left themselves vulnerable because they don't have that. So you can play good defense and you have a kicker, play the field position game. There's some damage to be done, particularly in the league now as we look around. And I don't know, even as well as obviously the Dallas Cowboys are playing, the New England Patriots, you got to love what's going on with Oakland. I don't know that there's any absolutely dominant teams. Dallas probably falls in that category. But their defense still has some questions. The Patriots, even though they continue to win, look a little vulnerable with the offensive line. So, like we say every week, everybody has a few holes here and there. So that makes it very competitive. And regrettably, between now and the playoffs, injuries are going to affect one or more teams in terms of where we end up with this thing.
Coach, you're a deep thinker. You've been at this a long time from a kid being a fan of the league, and you go back and remember the Tom Dempseys and when Janikowski came in the league and kicking field goals. Can you imagine coaching in a game where your kicker makes a 52, a 54, and a 57-yard field goal? Not in Denver, not in a dome, on a windy 40-something degree day. I mean, are we at the point where I guess humans run faster now than they did 50 years ago, that we shouldn't be shocked that a special kicker could come along and make 57-yard field goals semi-automatic? Because it certainly feels like he's doing something here now that I don't think we've ever seen done before.
And confidence is that force multiplier. He has such confidence in himself. The team actually has confidence in him, and it just keeps feeding on itself. Like I said, you look around the league and look at how many guys are missing PATs, all but at field goal depth now because of the new rule change, and that's getting into the head of some guys. And all of a sudden it's affecting games. So when you have a guy that has that kind of confidence, the team has confidence in him, it just grows and grows. Like you said, I was lucky to have my entire head coaching career with Matt Stover, and you felt that same, although not quite the range, obviously, that Tucker has, the consistency. We knew when we got to a certain point it was going to be automatic.
Coach, you've been gone a long time around here, even though you're still in our hearts. But to see Marshall Yanda out there still doing this, to see Suggs still doing this, and what Yanda has done moving from the right side to the left side, I don't know where you were in that part of that in the early days as to where he would be. I know I've had long chats with Mike Flynn about what kind of player Marshall Yanda has become when he was there in the beginning. But, Yanda said he was laying around last weekend and thought a week and a half ago and said, maybe I could play the left side. Hadn't thought about it, recommended it. They've put him in there, and they've been a better offensive line with him playing in the wrong position with one arm. I mean, he's that good, right?
Oh, he is. And when we took him, we knew we had a solid player, and particularly when you're taking someone that's going to be a guard. Not really a sexy pick, but that's always an area you're kind of left wanting. So to be that secure on the inside, but to watch Marshall Yanda grow and to be, to be able to be at guard, go out to tackle. And I don't think people fully appreciate how difficult that is to go from one side to the other. You wouldn't think that it's that big a deal. It's the same position. It's the same play. You're doing the same things. But, like all of a sudden tomorrow, if you're right-handed, brush with your left hand. Go brush your teeth with your left hand. It sounds simple, and I guess you could eventually get there. But there's a lot more to it. But to have that flexibility has been huge. That staple for them has been a huge part of whatever they've been able to do within the offensive line and the offense.
Do you marvel at what Steve Smith has been able to do here? I mean, now over 1,000 catches. Every time he catches one, especially after 3 years ago getting thrown out of Carolina, especially last year after the injury, for him to make it back and to still be a factor out on the field for every defense to have to cover. I mean, this is to me where you're squeezing the juice out of that Hall of Fame candidacy that he probably 3 years ago, we talked about him as being in the Hall of Very Good and all that. After the 3 years of seeing him here, I don't know how you could vote against him.
Oh, I agree 100%. Just in terms of the whole, and just his whole story coming out of, Compton and the JC picture, went to Utah, was a third-round pick, and the career he had a great career in Carolina, and that in itself would probably have been enough. But to do it and come and stay at what he's done with the Ravens and just the sheer fire and the competitiveness. Sometimes, he pushes the edges. We saw that on Sunday. That competitiveness can lead you astray occasionally. But he has such passion for the game. As John will say, the guy practices angry.
Well, he does. I've seen his work out there. For Marvin picking up the pieces here at 3-7-1, I don't think he's getting fired. I've talked to the people in Cincinnati. He's got a year left on the deal. He's been the best coach they've ever had there. But where are they as far as picking up pieces for next year now that the ship has sailed on this year? I watched part of their efforts on Sunday, and I looked and I see the same players that I saw 3, 4, 5 years ago. There's going to be a lot of change there, isn't there?
There is, and that happens. If you're lucky, not lucky is the wrong word, if you're fortunate enough to last that long in one place like he has in Cincinnati, you're going to go through a couple iterations. That's just a fact of it. We talked about how in the offseason, the changeover in the secondary, the changeover in the receiving corps from that run of playoff teams that he had. That is going to happen to you, and they're clearly in it right now. The big question for them going forward is, do they still believe in Andy Dalton as that guy? And there'll be some that question that. And going forward with Marvin, I agree with you 100%. I don't think they're going to make a change. They don't want to make a change. They like Marvin as their coach. Sometimes in this league, and you see it in any number of different places, sometimes a change just has to be made because of change. It's not fair. It's not right. It's not an indictment on the coach. I don't know if Cincinnati thinks of themselves that way. The fan base, obviously, because at the end of the day, the coach is the cheapest change you can make in terms of you can't change the entire roster. You're not going to fire the owner. The general manager is, okay, well, let's give him 3-4 draft classes to see how good he is. So the most noteworthy change to, signal to that fan base, okay, we're going to do something different here, is to make a change with the head coach. And I know they don't want to do that in Cincinnati. I don't think they will, but certainly there'll be the hue and cry for that from the fan base.
I'll tell you what, when the schedule came out, we saw Miami coming in here first week of December, and I'm like, well, they got Cincinnati, they got New England, they got to go on the road to, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati at the end. Miami, that'll be the easiest game they have, maybe even Philadelphia in a couple of weeks. Boy, Miami's 7-4. I know they held on, by a shoestring there at the end with Colin Kaepernick, but they're a far better football team than I think anybody thought, and they're now at 7-4, really thinking about playing football in January, and this is a pretty tough matchup for the Ravens this week.
Yeah, I talked about it's kind of unique on our Game Day First show on Sunday about how the intertwining of the NFC East, the second-level teams behind New England, where you're talking about Miami and Buffalo, and the NFC or the AFC North with Pittsburgh and Baltimore in terms of them fighting out to see who's going to win the division. That's likely going to be the only team in the playoffs, and I may be wrong. But the reason I meld these two together is because Baltimore's going to play Miami and New England, okay? And Pittsburgh still has to play Buffalo. And obviously this is likely still going to come down to Baltimore and the Pittsburgh game in Week 16, but this interaction with the NFC or the AFC East, and Miami is a factor, and, you never know. The AFC West, and they all have to play one another, so we could see a little bit of elimination there. This head-to-head with Miami could be, if indeed it comes down to a wild card tiebreaker, the head-to-head could be huge.
Oakland got rocked a little bit there in the third and fourth quarter and managed to fight back. Carr had the injury to his hand. They won. And that's what teams that are going to win 12 or 13 games, they're going to have games where they blow 3 touchdown leads the way the Raiders did on Sunday. But they came charging back. They've really proved a lot to me thus far. They're a pretty good football team. They're going to be a real factor in January.
Yeah, you got to love that. The league's right. When Dallas and Oakland are good, it just feels right, right? It just kind of takes us all back to our childhood because it's been that long since both those teams were good. I love what Oakland's doing, and it's interesting. Let's go back to the Raiders-Ravens game where the Ravens went up, and that was not a confident Raider team in the second half. You could see they were shook a little bit. Are we going to be able to do this? We're on the road. Then they kind of regathered it and went the length of the field and got the win. Well, in the same circumstance, all but at home, they've gone through that now. They've won on the road. They've made all the East Coast swings. They are undefeated on the road. Now they come home and they get in that same situation. The difference is their confidence and the confidence they have now versus that team that kind of had the confidence and kind of built on it and worked their way through it when they were able to beat the Ravens in that last drive. It's kind of fun to watch this young team grow.
No one with more confidence than the Dallas Cowboys, and I know it may have curdled your turkey and your pumpkin pie a little bit on Thursday, too. I never mind watching the Redskins lose. That's an impressive team there. Now, I haven't been down there and seen it last weekend, watching it again on Thursday. I don't want to say they're on cruise control at this point, but they're the best team. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that, and that offensive line looks like they're not going to take a day off.
No, and because you knew, and as it continues to grow, you knew the offensive line is good. Ezekiel Elliott's the real deal. We see that Dak Prescott's the real deal. They've got They got a Hall of Famer at tight end with Jason Witten. Dez Bryant's obviously an impact. Cole Beasley is really a great slot receiver. But the surprise is they're really playing pretty good defense, particularly short in the secondary. Not a great defense, not league-leading defense. I don't even say they're top 10 defense necessarily, but they're solid enough to go with an offense that truly is overpowering. The physicality of Seattle when they're healthy, and they're not healthy right now, and we saw a little bit of that. That wasn't the same Seattle team that had to go on in Tampa Bay and lose to Tampa Bay. Not that Tampa Bay isn't showing that they could be a real team, but they seem to be the only team physical enough in the NFC to go toe-to-toe with the Dallas Cowboys. That is when they're healthy. They're going to have to get Earl Thomas back and obviously keep Cam Chancellor and get their defensive line settled and get Bennett back as well. They're the only team I see in the NFC that is physical enough to keep up with the Cowboys.
That was a heck of a slip by them on Sunday, right down in Tampa. Long trip, tough trip, but to only come out with 5 points. Not a real solid effort from the Seattle offense on Sunday.
Yeah, and again, we saw where the vulnerabilities are. We say everybody has some vulnerabilities, and there is still that offensive line that weren't able to run the ball. Weren't able to get quite as many explosive plays, turn the ball over. And let's give Tampa credit as well. They went on the road and beat Kansas City, and now they're playing home. They're around this. Our buddy Mike Smith obviously doing a great job with the defense. Jameson Winston has really just been brilliant going into this last weekend. He had 300-plus yard games, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Obviously, the 2 opening drives that they had against Seattle to set the temperament had to kind of hold on to the end. And count on the defense to get the turnover. But Tampa is a team that is getting better, and at 6-5 is kind of, and Atlanta, even though Atlanta's playing well, they're 1 game back. We kind of thought the NFC South was kind of done, and could anybody hang around? You also have to watch out for that New Orleans Saints. They're going to play Buccaneers twice over the next 5 weeks, so that's going to be interesting.
They're the best offense in football, right? I mean, the
question.
Saints, and year after year, Drew Brees, it's nothing impressive about it, except that they go out and put 40 on you every week.
Yeah, and they have to. because that defense is and they're kind of hanging in there, and they're trying to be better, obviously. But there again, you're just talking about the difference in extremes, because defensively, New Orleans is 27th in the league in defense, and deservedly so. But you look at what they're doing. Although, and I know you always like to get on the Redskins, but what the Redskins are doing on offensively is pretty impressive. I would put them right there with New Orleans in terms of the best offenses. I think, and you're not going to put Kirk Cousins in the same breath as Drew Brees. Obviously over long term, Drew Brees is a Hall of Famer. But Kirk Cousins right now, this is they're playing. They're right there toe to toe with New Orleans.
You buying what Detroit's selling at this point, and certainly for that division as well as the AFC South with Tennessee and Houston. It's sort of week to week, but more people are buying the Detroit special sauce after what I would consider to be a pretty fortunate win on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, they're proven to be solid, and Matthew Stafford's proven to be the real deal. I was up in Detroit. Of course, my son-in-law plays for the Pistons, and had a great win against the Clippers, by the way.
I watched that.
Time watching that.
I did watch a little bit.
So the family, we were able to convene in Detroit, and the city is excited. They're excited about what the Lions are going on, because it's been a long time, and to have a game on Thanksgiving that meant what it did, and for Detroit to play the way it is, and yeah, they're for real. Now, are they strong enough to make a run in the playoffs? I think they're laying a groundwork for it. Matthew Stafford is the real deal. He's playing as well as any quarterback in the National Football League. There's only so much around them. Jim Caldwell's doing a nice job. They're okay on defense. I don't know that they can really challenge, whether it be the Dallas Cowboys, the Seattle Seahawks, when you get right down to it, or a team that really has a dominance. That Minnesota defense was pretty good, but can Detroit hold up if they have to get into a track meet with one of these good offenses? When you talk about the Cowboys, the Washington, New York Giants are playing really good offense. Matt Flynn and Atlanta Falcons are really high-flying offensively. So they're just a kind of a good, solid team that probably deserves to be in the playoffs. I don't know how far they'll go.
Houston, last thing for you. Boy, the Osweiler thing, for all the promise of the offseason, he's really stunk at various points of the season. I mean, he's a Jekyll and Hyde guy, huh?
Well, and you got to look. It's easy to look back now. We can all say, "Oh, yeah, I knew it wasn't any good." But the fact of the matter is that John Elway and Gary Kubiak, who have been in this league a long time, who both played in this league, made a pretty clear determination. No, we don't think this guy's the real deal, and that's kind of worth noting. And obviously, Bill O'Brien, had to make something happen with all the foibles they've had at the quarterback position. Believe me, I know something about not being able to have that solidified quarterback position. And so I think this is the guy. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the repercussions of that may be, because you're right, there's nothing we see in Brock Osweiler with a team that's got a pretty good defense now, that any signs that he is worth the contract that they gave him.
He is Coach Billick out on Twitter. He is our partner here at WNST on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. If you haven't seen what they built over there at the UA House, you got to check that out. We're going to have James Bond on next week to talk all things Living Classrooms, but we're going to give the coach the rest of the week off here and get ready for this Miami game. Hey, it's exciting, Coach. It's December. We got a piece of first place here. Life is good in the land of pleasant living.
That's all you can ask for. Otherwise, you're just being greedy.
We'll see you on Sunday morning as well as on Monday night out on NFL Network. He is Coach Billick out on Twitter. You can find me in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox each and every morning, courtesy of Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. And if there's breaking news, it happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That comes to you courtesy of Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colossus will be here on Thursday driving home to the special Wednesday edition of the SSV on WNST. Back Thursday from 3 until 5. I will join him on Thursday. We've got a busy week around here with the Terps playing. Checking out the Caps a couple times this week as well as the Ravens hosting the Dolphins this week. If you need me, nasty at WNST.net finds me on email. I am a very available individual. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on Facebook Live as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel. If you want to get swabbed for the bone marrow registry, we're doing that on Wednesday night at Christopher Daniel in Timonium. Doing some radio with Zach Orr, who's leading the Ravens in tackles, as well as Anthony Levine, who we're helping with his special teams Pro Bowl bid, and I love Anthony Levine, so I've never interviewed him on the radio. So I'm looking forward to getting Anthony out. It's gonna be fun. That's Wednesday night. That's at Christopher Daniel. Thursday night, Dennis Pitta will join us at Greenmount Station in Hampstead. Going back up north to Carroll County. Got some great football fans up there. It's been a while since we've taken Dennis up to Greenmount Station. I'll be the one having the crab cakes. Wednesday night, Zach Orr and Anthony Levine and Christopher Daniel. Thursday night, Dennis Pitta at Greenmount Station in Hampstead. Swabbing both nights for There Goes My Hero, the DKMS, and the Bone Marrow Registry. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.